But we begin in Washington, where President Trump is ramping up the pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin. He has announced a new deal with NATO that will send additional weaponry to Ukraine. And during an Oval Office meeting with the alliance's Secretary General, Mr. Trump said he is disappointed with his Russian counterpart. He's giving Russia 50 days to reach a deal or face 100% secondary tariffs from the United States, along with this new weapons deal.
I've been hearing so much talk. It's all talk. It's all talk, and then missiles go into Kiev and kill 60 people. It's got to stop. That's got to stop. But the purpose of this is to say that this is a very big deal we've made. This is billions of dollars worth of military equipment is going to be purchased from the United States, going to NATO, etc. And that's going to be quickly distributed to the battlefield.
And for more on this, let's bring in CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cordes. Nancy, always a pleasure to see you. How much damage could these impending tariff measures have on Russia? And can we also talk about why the president is holding off for 50 days instead of simply imposing those tariffs right now?
Sure. He means for it to be an incentive for Russia to come back to the bargaining table and really make a good faith effort towards reaching a ceasefire. That is his primary goal. And what the White House is hoping is that by making this threat, and it is a serious threat, that Russia will find that it's better off actually coming back and negotiating. Because what these secondary sanctions or tariffs would do is, we've already sanctioned the entire Russian economy. The U.S. doesn't really purchase any goods from Russians. But there are other countries that still do purchase a lot of Russian oil and gas, specifically China, Brazil, and India. And as long as those countries continue to purchase energy from Russia, Russia has some of the funds it needs to continue to perpetrate this war year after year. So if you make it more financially difficult for those countries to continue to buy that energy by imposing sanctions on them, then they may think twice about purchasing that oil and gas, and Russia will be left with much less money with which to buy weaponry, build weaponry to fire on Ukraine.
And Nancy, as you know, Ukraine is not a NATO country. So how is it able to get this kind of support without being a member of the alliance?
Well, NATO would help to arrange and coordinate the sales of U.S. weapons to European countries that would then give those weapons to Ukraine. But NATO would essentially be a pass-through. It would actually be individual European nations that would be purchasing those weapons and then providing with Ukraine with the weaponry. They've already been doing that in many cases. Germany, for example, has been giving weapons to Ukraine for years. But this solves a couple of big problems for the United States. Number one, it sends a message to Russia, first and foremost, hey, you can't wait the U.S. out here. These weapons are going to continue to go to Ukraine for years to come, because now the U.S. isn't going to be spending as much money as it was before. And then, there were lawmakers, Republicans in particular, who were growing weary of funding both humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine. And this setup is going to make them feel a lot better, because now the U.S. can actually make money by selling these weapons to the Europeans.
Nancy Cordes, thank you very much. And joining us now from the Pentagon for more on this is CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. Charlie, what more are we learning about this deal on your end, and when are these missiles expected to arrive?
Yeah, well, Nancy, first of all, we're learning not just the missiles, but crucially the Patriot defense systems themselves, because that includes launch platforms, the radar systems, control vehicles. So it's quite a lot of package there. But as NATO Defense Secretary Mark Rutte mentioned, this package will include other missiles and ammunition. I'm sure artillery will be part of that equation. Now, in terms of the timeline, the president said that the weapons will be arriving in Ukraine within days, and that kind of is a possibility. They both pointed out that the German defense minister visits the Pentagon today. As a matter of fact, he's here now. Germany has a number of those Patriot systems. As Nancy pointed out, Germany has already been providing Ukraine with lots of weaponry, including Leopard tanks. So the idea would be that these NATO countries would start moving those systems as soon as possible, and then repurchase the missile systems and the missiles themselves to replenish their own supplies. Officials here tell me there are dozens of these kind of weapon systems scattered throughout Europe, including Poland, which has been a sort of terminal distribution point for U.S. weapons. The president said today that there are 17 ready to go. He's very specific about that number that would be sent to Ukraine in addition to Ukraine's own defenses.
How much would the addition of these new systems have on the trajectory of the war at this point?
Well, you know, frankly, the reason President Zelensky wants them is they're best in class, right? Ukraine doesn't have anything within its own arsenal to intercept Russia's fast-moving ballistic missiles and the larger missiles. And the Russians know this, right? And they've had a full court press in Ukraine. They know Ukraine is running low on air defenses, which is one of the reasons we've seen this heaviest bombardment of that country in recent days. The Ukrainians have their own anti-drone systems, which have been effective. But the Russians tend to swarm areas, so they'll mix in ballistic missiles along with those drones. So this is not a game changer. I hate that term anyway, especially when it comes to military. And these are defensive weapons. Keep that in mind. At the moment, it's believed that Ukraine has about half a dozen of these, so 17 would be a big addition. And they may not be all operational. Where it might change things is because they're a limited supply, they've largely been used to defend cities like Kyiv and Kharkiv. If you were able to push those defense systems toward the front line to defend their own forces, that may change the situation on the battlefield significantly. The real question, and it hasn't been answered yet, is whether this new commitment from NATO partners to Ukraine might include long-range offensive weapons that would be able to strike Russian defense lines or inside Russia itself. But the point is, you know, at least for the optics, the White House is just sending this message. This is a major U-turn on Putin, and far from balking from sending weapons, now it's trying to flood the country with them.
Sure, a message being heard loud and clear. Charlie D'Agata, thank you very much.